We're gonna learn about food in World War One. I'm pretty excited. Not gonna lie.
Limited options when it came to food in the trenches. But with a clever cook on hand, they might be able to use their
For those of you who don't know, Sunset Joker is a based fellow cooking enjoyer. You know, he did a little bit of cooking in school.
rations to make something like this potato pie made using a military recipe from...
I've actually eaten that before. Close to being free from work, then I'm picking up some za. What is za?
1914. So thank you to my Patreon patrons for supporting this channel as I cook for the Tommies in the trenches. This time on Tasting History.
Pizza? Oh.
Food on the Western Front during World War I was pretty monotonous. It was pretty much a combination of bully beef and biscuits. That is, canned corned beef and hardtack. But while some complained of the monotony, many soldiers were coming from a place where they were lucky to have meat 1 or 2 times a week, so...
Bro, imagine what happened. Let them have cake, I say. Eat the cake, I say. Didn't a whole revolution follow after someone said that?
A daily ration of meat, canned or not, was actually a step up. Like when the men of Stockport's territorial soldiers joined up with the Cheshire Regiment, they thought they were eating high on the hog. You should have seen the scramble. I thought Mackinac was great, but the good old potato pie wants some beating.
What kind of beating?
Just fancy potato pie being served to the Cheshires. And it...
I think I've actually had the potato pie. I think we call it something else down here. It's basically like a mash on top of like a canned beef. Usually with, like, if you're lucky, a little bit of onion springed in. It's called poor man's pie.
It turns out there is a proper military recipe for that potato pie. It comes from the field cooking section of the 1914 edition of the Manual of Military Cooking, prepared at the Army School of...
You know what they say? Everything is great when it's military grade except the food.
Cookery. Potato pie. 16.5 pounds meat, 20 pounds potatoes, 1 pound onions, 3 ounces salt.
Can someone translate this into freedom units? I want grams and I want liters.
1/2 ounce of pepper. Cut up and stew the onions with jelly from the meat added. Boil or steam...
I'm sorry, what? The jelly from the meat? Why does your meat have jelly? I would learn how to cook these to try to get a girlfriend. Sounds tasty. I don't know, sounds a little bit suspicious to me.
Steam the potatoes. When cooked, mash them. Line the sides of the dish with 1/3 of the mashed potatoes. Place the meat and cooked onions in the
I mentioned there was onions as well. See, I've literally had this dish before.
center. Season with pepper and salt. Cover over the remainder of the mashed potatoes and bake till the potato cover is brown. As the mashed potatoes absorb the moisture of the meat and render it dry, about 2 pints of gravy prepared from the liquor in which the onions were cooked should be poured into the pie before serving. Now that is a mighty big pie, enough for 22 men serving.
22 men, damn, that's a huge pie. I could probably eat half of it. Okay, maybe not half. I mean, in my high school days, I could eat a lot more than I could now. Sunset Joker will confirm.
In the Army. So I'm going to cut this down to just 8 servings, which still should be quite a lot of pie. So for this World War I potato pie, what you'll need is 2 pounds or 925...
Yep, this is literally the exact same meat we use. So this is called bully beef down here, which is basically just canned processed meat. And you get some of this, and you chop up like half an onion, put it in a nice tray, square, bottomless fit for a stomach, yep. And then after that, mashed potatoes. Although most people down here use like instant mash. And then, you know, just put it in the oven, there you go.
5 grams of tinned corned beef. Now you may be tempted to use fresh meat for this, but the recipe is specific that it wants preserved meat. And the recipe has you use the jelly or the gelatin that is inside of the can and attached.
And the reason why they specifically called for canned meat, I think one of the benefits is that it lasts for a really long time. It's easy to transport, it doesn't go off, which is especially helpful for military expeditions where you need to get food across, you know, very large distances and you need it to stay fresh and edible.
To the meat, so you really got to get that real tinned bully beef. Then 2.5 pounds or...
Is that the thing, bully beef? Yeah. We just call poor man's pie down here, but I've basically eaten military grade food, I guess. Or it can be used as a projectile thrown hard enough. True. That's the whole point of processed meat. Well, you don't get fat. Oh, okay. I'm pretty sure if you still ate enough, you would probably still get obese. You know, too much of anything is bad.
1.1 kilograms of potatoes, 2 ounces or 55 grams of diced onions, 1.5 teaspoons of salt, 1 teaspoon of pepper, and to make the gravy you'll need 2 tablespoons of butter and 1 tablespoon of cornstarch. So the first thing you want to do is make the mashed potatoes, and it's really up to you if you want to leave the skins on or peel them. I'm going to leave the skins.
For those of you guys who don't know, down here, a lot of us, after we peel potatoes, will actually fry the peels. It's really nice.
On because I like them, and frankly, it's easier. Either way, chop them into small cubes and put them in a pot and cover with water. Then bring it to a simmer and boil for about 20 minutes or until they're very soft, at which point you can drain them and mash them up. This is really the simplest, most basic mashed potato that ever
100% you should peel them. Don't put your peels in my damn pie.
was. No butter, no cream, zip. Then we can simmer the onions, and really you can do this while you're boiling the potatoes. All you do is gather up all of that gelatin that is attached to the meat and inside of the can, and add that with the onions in a small saucepan, and then pour in about 1.5 cups of water. Set that over a low heat and bring it to a simmer, and cook the onions until they're translucent. About 12 to 15 minutes should do. Then remove them from the stove and strain
I think my mom actually fries onions for this.
out the cooking liquid, but don't get rid of that because we need that to make our gravy. And now we can move on to the corned beef. This you should mash up like you would ground beef and then season it with the salt and pepper. Honestly, there is a lot of salt in corned
Both ways are good? Yeah.
beef, so I don't really think it needs more salt added, but the recipe says to do so, so that's what I'm doing. Then we add the onions in and mix it all up until they're well incorporated. Now up to this
incorporated. What a posh way of saying mixed.
point, everything that we've done could be done in pretty much any field kitchen. These
Yeah, pretty much. The ingredients are super easy to source. You know, it's just canned meat. It's potatoes and onions. Basically a trifecta of the hello? If he knocks, I'll be able to hear him. Anyways, meat, potatoes, onions, all you need.
These were horse-drawn stoves that were typically wood-fired, though coal and oil-fired also existed, like the Loon Valley kitchen that included not only
That's a kitchen? Bro, I can't even tell what this is. I thought it was like a carriage. I don't even know. I can't even tell what I'm looking at. It's like one of those optical illusion puzzles.
a stovetop for frying and two 20
Maybe there's like a grill to back. I don't
gallon
know.
boilers for preparing stews, but it also had 2 large ovens fitted with baking dishes.
Okay.
These kitchens were meant to cook enough food for
So it's basically like a mobile stove.
250 soldiers every single day. So
250 a day? Damn, these are like industrial grade stoves then.
let's just assume we would have access to one of those so we can go ahead and make this pie. So assemble your potato pie by taking 1/3 of the mashed potatoes and pressing them around the edges of an 8 by 8 inch baking pan. At first I thought I would put them on the bottom too, but the recipe is pretty clear that it just wants them around the edges. Then add in your corned beef and onion filling into the center and
For us, what we do is we put it on the bottom as well. So basically we like fill it up, like the bottom 2/3, and then the actually top third will just be the meat.
tamp it down to fill up all the corners. Then put the remaining mashed potatoes on top, spreading them over the meat just like a very
Yeah,
basic
and of course
shepherd's
we'll
pie.
top it with,
Then pop that into the oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 205 Celsius and bake until the top of the potatoes start to brown about 35 to 40 minutes, during which time we can make our gravy. Now, there are a few recipes from the period in
Although I don't think I've actually had it with gravy though.
army manuals on how to make gravy. This is one of the more basic versions because we're using that water that we boiled the onions in. So you take that liquid and you heat it back up on the stove, and then you add in the butter and let it melt completely, and then
Fat.
whisk the cornstarch into a little water to make a slurry and add that into the simmering liquid, mixing it in, and let it simmer for about 10 minutes.
Listen, unless it's brown, if it's going on red meat, I don't want it on. Mein Gehör, top left. Shrek the Fallen Racist. Uh-oh, I've been caught. Don't worry about that, guys. That is a very important tab that I sadly cannot just remove. Please ignore it for now.
Or until it's thickened up. That should
Add a little beef broth and that gravy will be beef flavored, yes. And then it'll be nice and brown. And then it'll be edible. You got the brown gravy for the red meats, and you need the white gravy for any of your light meats, like fish, chicken, duck, But you can put brown gravy on chicken. It's very good.
Take about 10 minutes. Plenty of time to tell you that I am now uploading ad-free videos over on Patreon and
Nice.
here on...
I don't know if he knows this, but all my videos that I watch are ad-free because I use Brave, and the lion does things to the ads. I'll leave it there. If you know the meme, you know the meme.
YouTube for memberships, so I'll put links in the description to where you can find those. They're these videos, but without ads. And now I can tell you a bit more about what the British troops, the Tommies, ate in the trenches on the Western Front.
Let me guess. Canned beans. $50 says it's canned beans.
During World War I.
And yes, we're gonna bully them hard. The lion doesn't ask for ad consent, based on true. I'm literally using Brave right now.
So I wanted to start by recommending this book,
Bully Beef and Biscuits. Food in the Great War.
Beef and Biscuit.
Bro, that guy's got a really funny mustache, not gonna lie. There was a certain soldier in the First World War that also had a mustache like that. Wonder what they meant by this.
It is a wonderful overview of all things British food during World War I.
The British were allowed to wear mustaches. Apparently so.
Both with the soldiers and on the home front. But today, I am just talking about feeding the soldiers, the enlisted men, because the officers ate very, very differently, on the Western Front during the war.
Yeah, apparently the officers got to have a little bit more niceties. But mandatory during the time? Oh, I don't actually know that about the British.
Now, when the war broke out in August of 1914, Britain was not really prepared to actually go to war. So quickly, the government called for any young men over the age of 19 to join the army. Many of those were actually younger than 19, but they joined up provided they lied about their age, because it doesn't seem that there was a great system for actually confirming anyone's age. It was just kind of a...
That looks kind of cool, not gonna lie. That little glasses apparatus he's got in his head. That's some sci-fi stuff right there.
You're 19? Okay, sure, why not? So now you have hundreds of thousands of young men in their late teens and early 20s joining up to fight the Germans. But just as many young men today, they were not adept at feeding themselves, let alone cooking for each other. And so the army had to very quickly train some of them as cooks.
Hey man, if you were the cook in the army, you got the most respect. You know, bar the squad leader or anyone else in authority. You disrespect the cook, you go without food, man. He keeps you alive. Without the cook, you don't survive the battlefield. That and being a doctor, yeah, you're everybody's friend if you're the cook and the doctor. The cook can do you solid, and the doctor can save your life.
There were a few army schools of cookery in England, and they quickly set up more in France and other parts of the world. But before the war broke out, there was a 4-month program to teach these people how to cook for the enlisted men and for the officers. But once the war broke out, that went from 4 months down to about 2 to 4 weeks.
Damn, imagine learning how to cook in only 4 weeks. They really had to expedite that process. I mean, imagine they were pretty desperate to get cooks on the front line with their troops, though, because they were so unprepared for the war.
And most of that time was actually not spent in teaching cooking, but in teaching sanitation and how to make sure that everybody was not going to get sick.
I wonder, when was the, there was this one doctor, I think, who discovered that washing your hands, you know, prevents your patients from dying. I don't remember who it was, but I think it was also, it was a very recent thing. I think it happened in like the late 1800s when he discovered this. So it wouldn't surprise me if like good hygiene, especially during the ages of World War I, wasn't well known, especially among young people.
Also, at the start of the war, it was hard to get volunteers to do the cooking because it seemed like an inglorious position compared to the glorious position of charging at a German army out in the open field.
And getting mowed down by machine guns. I'll take the cook any day.
But very quickly, people realized that...
Yep, trench warfare, bro. You'd much rather be a food cook than someone fighting in the trenches. Trust me, it sucked. Everything I've read about this, it sucked royally.
War is not so...
I prefer to be the artillery officer. Well, I'm pretty sure you gotta get promoted before you get there. Until then, you're either making bully beef pie or you're in the trenches.
Fun, and so a lot more people wanted to become cooks after that, especially because it did come with some perks. For one thing, I was sent on a cookery course at an army cookery school in a village hall well behind the lines for a month. We were taught how to cook meat, vegetables, and the sort of puddings.
Puddings? Okay, I didn't actually know that you got puddings in the army. I thought it was always just, the bare basic bones. But damn, imagine like after like days of fighting, you sit down with your remaining comrades and the cook brings you some pudding. Oh man, it gives you shivers down your spine just thinking about how, how much of a relief it is to chomp down on some custard or something.
That could be made from the rations we got. For example, if we were lucky enough to get currants, we could...
What the heck's a currant?
...make plum duff. We were also taught how to cut up quarters of beef, whole carcasses of sheep, and sides of bacon, because that's how the rations came.
They got bacon in the army? Hell yeah, sign me up.
So you were sent off away from the fighting, a definite plus. And even when you got back from cookery school, you were placed along the supply lines, which could be several hundred yards back from the front line. So a place of relative safety. And I say relative...
Supply lines just get attacked by things like that.
Because there are numerous stories of shells coming and blowing up the kitchens just as well, but it was safer.
Imagine being like, hey chef, what's for lunch? Don't worry, it's going to be a bomb. 5 minutes later, kaboom! The kitchen explodes.
Than the front lines. Though a lot of people working in the kitchens who were not necessarily the cooks still had to go to the front lines to take the hot food up to the men who were there. So hot meals were sent up regularly and included a hot supper issued generally about midnight.
Damn, eating at midnight? Damn, we eat at like 6, between 5 and 6 over here.
The meals being mostly carried up by the support company. And these hot meals could really vary in quality depending on the ingredients that you got. Mostly it was canned foods that were being used, but once in a while you had access to something else. Like in 1915, when a private from the Cheshire Regiment of the 6th Battalion wrote that we had a stroke of luck on February 16th. A group of cattle strayed near our trenches, so we shot a young steer.
Oh, then they had some good beef tonight.
We cut a leg off, and in less than 2 hours, men and officers alike were having a feed fit for a king.
That sounds so wholesome.
Fried steak with the...
Can you imagine being a German soldier in the trenches and you've got your, I don't know, your bad potatoes mashed together and you're busy eating basically slop, and then you smell the fried or the grilled steak coming from across the trenches, wafting just over the smell of dead bodies and rather rot, and you're like, damn, the jealousy, the envy.
The Germans 200 yards from us.
It's like when you're coming home and you've just got bread to eat, but your neighbor's having a braai or a barbecue next door, and you're like, oh, damn it.
Of course, it also depended on who was doing the cooking. Some cooks were obviously better than others. Like, I would not want to be served a meal from the cook of the 22nd Field Ambulance. One of the men of the unit wrote, I must say we are living very well. Plenty to eat. We had a jam roll for dinner the other day, and the only fault about it was the cook wrapped it in the towel that we wiped the patient.
Aw, damn it, they ate the feet rolls. Smuggalana Simp must enjoy food like that, ain't that right, Simp?
Feet with. But he said he washed it well before he cooked the pudding. Of course, we could not answer for the truth of that, but anyway, it went down all right. Those little trifles don't amount to much out at the front. Even something as
something as basic as that, that's the least of your worries.
Simple, but as precious as tea could be ruined by a negligent cook. Having found the battalion cooks and their wagons, little time was lost in making tea, which all ranks had not tasted for 5 days.
Damn.
By the time it was ready to be served, darkness had fallen. The men with their canteen tins formed up and filed past their respective company quartermaster sergeants, who ladled out the precious liquid. Alas,
it should have been coffee.
Alas, in the darkness, salt instead of sugar.
How do you make such bugger up? I don't know.
Had been put into the tea. Not great, but I'm guessing they drank it anyway. Tea,
yeah, I would have drank it anyway, bro.
Tea was, after all,
anything for a hot drink.
One of the most important part of the enlisted man's ration. They drank it with pretty much every meal. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, provided you were able to get 3 meals a day. But regardless of how many meals you got, you were given a set number of calories each day, in theory. And that was about 4,200 calories, though this did drop a bit as the war went on and
Yeah, just less rations to go around.
food became scarce. The calories mostly came from a daily ration of biscuits and bully beef, plus some bacon, vegetables, which were almost always dried, then some tea, sugar, cheese, a very small amount of rum, butter, and jam.
I wonder what the very small amount of rum was for.
And the jam was Tickler's plum and apple, and it was actually very important not just because it satiated one's sweet tooth, but because the canisters could actually be used to make makeshift hand grenades.
I actually remember reading this when I was reading up when I was watching a YouTube video about the history of hand grenades, of how when they got to World War One, they would talk about how they used to make explosives out of tin cans like that.
They were called jam jar bombs or jam tin bombs and were a specialty of the Anzacs, or Australian and New Zealand Army Corps. They were made by filling the can with shrapnel embedded in resin and then fitted with some explosive, a detonator, and a fuse, and then sealed. And it wasn't just jam pots, they also used condensed milk cans and bully beef tins, which had once held the Fray Bentos corned beef. This corned beef required no cooking and was
So theoretically, meanwhile the Canadians, we don't talk about the Canadians. So theoretically, it's possible that if I eat my next can of bully beef from my poor man's pie, I could end up making a hand grenade.
an ideal food for those men who were in areas of the trenches where the hot meals from the kitchens just couldn't make it. It was actually rather common for men to have to cook their own rations because they were in areas that were either too dangerous or just too difficult to get the food from the kitchens to them. And so for those men, there were a few options. One was to just eat your rations cold, and that would be fine for the bully beef, not delicious, but you could eat it cold, it didn't need to be cooked, as well as the jam and the cheese, and of course, the biscuits or hardtack. There were a few companies that made these biscuits, but most famous was Huntley and Palmer's, who produced the Army Biscuit number.
I'm actually not a biscuit guy, just by the way. I think there's only one very specific type of biscuit that I'll actually eat. I'm not a biscuit enjoyer. Hardtack, I don't even know what that is.
4, which was a 4x4-inch square of flour, salt.
Someone tell me, how long, Fox, you gotta have to try hardtack? I do? Why? I mean, we already have hard biscuits. What are they called? Rusks. Yeah, we've got rusks. I enjoy rusks. That's the one exception I'll make. 4x4 inch. So it's basically a 10 by 10 centimeter, right? Yeah.
Salt and water, sometimes a little sugar, but often not, that was dried into a biscuit so hard that they needed to be broken up with a rock.
Biscuits only go with gravy? I see. That's an interesting take. I don't think I've ever had a biscuit with gravy
Before eating. And even
apparently you have to break these things with a rock before eating them. Damn.
and then, they couldn't be eaten dry. The Army biscuits suit me. Of course, they are too hard for my poor teeth, but hot tea and patience helps one past all. These biscuits, which were the staple of military food for the last 2,000 years in one form or another, were so hard that it was said that the goat mascot of the 5th Canadian Battalion couldn't even eat them.
Okay, if the goat can't eat them, you know you've invented basically a rock, not food. It's just a rock.
I've chewed on decks of cards, I've dined off nails. If this was a sardine tin, I might risk it. But this is where my goatish courage fails. I simply can't digest this HT biscuit. Really, the best way to eat these biscuits was to cook with them.
As much as people try
Either
to
include them in a soup to make it thicker like a stew, or to mash them up and mix them with hot water and jam, and that would make a sort of sweet porridge that you could have for breakfast.
Imagine the goat tries to eat on your biscuit, but its teeth breaks. You might as well just start making body armor instead of biscuits.
But to do that, that meant that you needed to be able to cook and have a source of fire, which was not something so easily done in the damp and muddy trenches of World War I. One option men had was to create what was known as a mess tin kitchen or mess tin stove.
So I assume they would just light the fire in here, and then all of the rations would be cooked at the same time.
And this is where a group could put food in their mess tins, then stack them in a way that created a small cave of sorts. The stack would be set on a piece of metal or something else that wouldn't burn, and then a little fire could be put into that cave, and it would heat the food around it.
That's actually pretty smart, not gonna lie. That's a pretty genius way to warm your food. Not quite as good as a conventional microwave, but it gets the job done.
Unfortunately, it was hard to find heat sources that really lasted, so often the food was still just lukewarm at best.
Better lukewarm than ice cold, man.
One way that they would create heat sometimes was to tear a bit of the burlap off of the sandbags, dip it into either lamp oil or candle wax, and then light that on fire. So it would stay on fire for a little while, but not great that you're taking apart the sandbags that are protecting you from German gunfire. So instead, the army started supplying the men with Tommy cookers, or
Tommy cookers?
campite. And these were essentially mini camping stoves that came with solidified fuel.
Oh, okay. That's very handy if the fuel is solidified, because I mean that's going to mean that anything's like you won't be able to spill it, or lose it as easily. The wind's not going to blow out the flame or whatever. So okay, that's
Something that could be lit and burn for a good 15 or 20 minutes. They were water resistant and they wouldn't go out in windy weather.
Water resistant is also a nice big bonus.
And this allowed for a single soldier to heat up their own rations in a can, whether it was a trench stew that they made themselves or one of the pre-made canned stews known as makanaki. This could refer to most any canned stew, but it got
Bro, half of these stuff looks like something you would get out of a Fallout game, not gonna lie.
its name from the original
This
makanaki
literally looks like it came off of a shelf in a store from Fallout 3.
army ration, which was a stew of beef, turnips, carrots, potatoes, onions, and green beans in a broth.
It kind of literally, yeah. I mean, if you think about it, then what is it called? The Fallout universe was based off of an alternate timeline from the 1940s, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the alternate timeline of the 40s. And then naturally, we would keep a lot of the 40s aesthetics. Food for a king, if you say so, pal. I'm not. It's 50s into 60s. Oh, okay, makes sense. Oh, hey, Quasar, how you doing, man? Welcome on in. Thanks for popping by. If I have a mod in here, can we get him a shout out? If not, I'll do it in a minute or so myself. Me eating World War One food in front of a broken village in Africa. Well, I guess you're in a king then. It's the Adam Aaron? Yeah, okay, makes sense. Because they had a lot of nukes in the Fallout timeline, because I mean that's kind of how the apocalypse came about in the first place.
Once described as an inferior grade of garbage, and it was purported to give the troops flatulence of a particularly offensive nature.
So basically, it turned them all into what I put this. It was the first use of chemical warfare, where the soldiers would just fart across the trenches, and then that's how the Germans, after getting a whiff of the potent stenches, decided to counterattack using very dangerous fumes. This was the start of chemical warfare. Some flatulence from a good stew.
And it was a divisive meal, to say the least. Many soldiers said that it was next to inedible, especially when it was cold, but when you were really, really hungry, it definitely did the job. As Lance Corporal Henry Buckle wrote in his diary, had a glorious meal today, got a makanaki ration from some engineers in the wood. A round tin containing meat, spuds, carrots, beans, and gravy, enough for 2 in a tin.
More like enough for 1 if I was in the army.
This is the first time we, the poor infantry, have seen one. Had a real blowout. Must try and get another. They are the goods, believe me. It was a plain stew.
The only diary that I know of, outside of what this guy was talking about, the war's gonna end in Christmas. I can smell the mustard from the sandwich place back up. The diary of Adrien Carton de Wiart. In his diary, because he was also a World War One soldier, he also fought in the Boer War before that, and World War II after that. But in his diary at the end of World War One, he actually wrote in his diary that, quite frankly, he had enjoyed the war. He was a legend.
But a hearty one, and a welcome change from months and months on end of nothing but bully beef and biscuits. Now, there were times when the rations or the...
Why does this guy look like Matt Pat, but 40 years old? Who? Adrien Carton de Wiart, also known as the Immortal Soldier, who fought 3 major wars, including both world wars, who was shot, I think, in the hip, in the face, in the eye, in the stomach, got his hand blown off and tore off his own fingers when the doctor refused to amputate, survived numerous plane crashes, got imprisoned by the Italians, and dug out and escaped using one arm. He actually wasn't British, but he did fight for the British Army. And so he wrote in his diary, "Quite frankly, I had enjoyed the war. The war was in his blood. In fact, he even ran away from home from his lawyer studies to go join the war. And he even said that he would have taken any side that picked him, whether it was Boer or whether it was British. And so the British just happened to hire him first. And he was actually disappointed when the First World War ended. And so he was pretty happy to go and serve, even though he's a veteran in World War II. Hello, hey Creepy Chief. Hey Chief, can you give Quasar a shout out? Reminds you of the guy who made Storm of Steel? Who's that guy?
The food that the soldiers got was much more elevated, mainly at Christmas time. And I did a whole video on what the World War I soldiers were eating at Christmas, specifically foods that were sent to them from their loved ones, like they would send them boiled puddings for Christmas.
Ooh,
then there was the
yum.
occasional
He's a German guy who joined World War I at the start and lived through it? Oh. Did he live through World War II as well?
bar of chocolate.
Damn, bro, imagine finding out in the trenches for a whole year and your loved one sends you chocolate. That's something to brag about. Instead of being the dude who made all
1914, the city of York sent a nice-sized tin of chocolate to all of the soldiers from the York area. And a gunner, Henry Bailey, was so grateful that he felt it necessary to write the city a thank you note. I feel that I ought to send my very best thanks for the nice box of chocolate I received so unexpectedly. I am proud to be able to say that I am a York lad, and am looking forward to a speedy termination of this cruel war. I shall prize the box as long as God spares me.
That's actually kind of wholesome to be gifted chocolate like that so unexpectedly.
I wish I could do that in a York accent. I love the
I don't even know what a York accent sounds like. He made a book based on his experience of the war? Interesting.
accent in...
You know, there was an Austrian painter who also made a book that detailed his experience in the First World War. I heard it was quite controversial.
And around York. It's absolutely wonderful. Anyway, Christmas puddings and chocolate, while wonderful, were definitely not the daily fare. Typically, if you wanted to get something other than your usual ration, you had to depend on a scrounger. And this was the name of a person in your unit who was good at scrounging around and getting extra things, whether that was a bit of extra fresh meat or tea or alcohol, sugar, anything really.
Okay.
But the term scrounger is just a really nice way of saying a thief.
Oh, I thought maybe, you know, maybe went to the trenches, maybe got some rations off of, you know, like abandoned supply lines or something. Nope, he just straight up stole them. Fun fact, All Quiet is made by a conscript who served for a short time. Oh, I didn't know that.
Because that's what they were. Now, there was one more ration that all of the soldiers carried with them, but was pretty much never opened, and that was the iron ration. And that was meant to only be eaten
You got injured and didn't see much action?
in case of an emergency. This typically included about 12 ounces of biscuits, a pound of corned beef, 2 ounces of sugar, and 5/8 of an ounce of tea, or enough for a few cups. And as it was meant to be used for
The ancestors of the smugglers? True.
emergencies only, there were periodic checks to make sure that each man had his, and printed on the box were the words, "Not to be opened unless instructed by an officer." Fortunately for me, there is no officer around to order me to open up my iron ration and eat that, so instead I get to eat something slightly fancier, and that would be my preserved meat potato pie.
So I imagine that iron ration was something that you would use in an absolute last resort. So either you're on the brink of death, or if your officer orders it. So that was like the absolute last resort type of meal. Correct? Okay, interesting. Did we give him a shout out? Creeper Chief? Yes, he did. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Enjoy your shout out, my good friend. About a soldier seeing his friends died and get trauma as a foot soldier. Sag.
So once the potatoes have browned a little on top, remove the pie from the oven and
I've unironically eaten this.
And serve it up, pouring a bit of the gravy on top. And here we are.
This is literally what I've had a few weeks ago. I didn't actually know that this was a meal used in military time.
Potato pie from the trenches of the Great War. I have to say, it doesn't smell that horrible. Kind of like
It's definitely edible.
just corned beef, really. But let's see how it tastes. There we go.
It's not bad. See?
That's very salty.
Yeah, it is got a pinch of salt depending on how much salt you put in. Literally, but how they also start from a low rank to an elite officer. Interesting. Although usually when we have something like this, we will normally have something with it, like peas, corn, or maybe some carrots, you know, some type of vegetable with this. And it serves as a meal. Turn it to a Stormtrooper? Nice.
You don't need to add salt.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's already salted. If you do, definitely not more than like a spoon.
I wish it had more onions.
My mom puts in a lot of onions. We are based onion enjoyers.
There are just so few onions. Could use more onions, but the flavor ain't half bad. It's just that the canned corned beef is so salty, really doesn't need to have more added. And old canned corned beef was actually usually even more salty.
Damn.
That's where the name corned beef comes from. It has nothing to do with corn, like an ear of.
Now, which one would you believe? The story about the horrors of war and a POV of a standard infantryman? I would probably go for the point of view of a standard infantryman. I most certainly think that first-hand accounts are more reliable.
Corn. It's
For a guy who joins a one rises through ranks. I mean, POV was infantryman. I like that one. But then again, you know, there is a temptation for the guy who just rises up the ranks like that.
that they
But I feel like infantryman would be a little bit more interesting. Because usually the higher up the ranks you go, the less combat you see.
would use big kernels of salt and pack it in that to give it the salty texture or salty flavor and preserve it.
Based.
And those corns of salt became corned beef. That is actually where we get the word corn, because a piece of a kernel of corn, kernel of wheat, all of those, it's all corn. Anyway, something that many troops had access to was this, not
The guy was like, the war ended, it was fun, but salt people died. Fun though. I see. So kind of similar to Adrian, where he wrote, quite frankly, I'd enjoyed the war.
this modern bottle, but it hasn't really changed much, and that is HP sauce. It was very common during World War I with the British Army. They would put it on absolutely everything. So I'm going to try a little bit of that. Just put a dab
What
on there.
actually is it? I don't know.
Here we go.
Is it like just instant gravy or something?
Yeah, it makes it much better. That's actually delicious now.
Character development? Yeah, trauma does build character. What's that, hot sauce?
I love HP sauce. I don't know how to explain it.
What is it?
It's a brown sauce.
Well, that
It's not ketchup, but it's kind of sweet like ketchup, but it's also, there's like a zing to it because it has malt vinegar in it. It's just delicious.
Yeah, we just have a Worcester sauce down here, which is actually spelt like Worcestershire sauce, but it's actually pronounced Worcester sauce for some reason. I have absolutely no idea why.
Still really popular in Britain. And I wish it was more
Probably because British food is very bland. They need they need their sauces.
popular here because it's
Basically, just like Tabasco sauce, put it on everything so you don't taste the bad.
absolutely good. So make this.
Thanks, Fraser. I
It's
appreciate it.
worth making. Just trying it out, and
I can recommend, if you guys, especially on low budget, some poor man's pie here, as we call it. It's pretty good. You didn't gain trauma? Well, that's good. I mean, you can go through a quote-unquote traumatic experience, but not develop trauma from it.
if nothing else, it'll make you grateful that you are not a Tommy in the trenches during World War I. And I will see you next time on Tasting History.
Sweet. Fox, you sneak? What do you mean sneak? I didn't sneak nothing. What are you talking about? Alright, GG's boys, that was a good link. Good link, geez, that was a good video. Let me paste that in there for you guys. So hello Monto, how you doing? Sneaky streaming? Well, I had a little bit of time left. So I figured, I'll take this chance. Alright